So now, ladies and gentlemen, live and in colour, it's Mr. Wayne Love Juice.
The other day our producer Louis had a chat with an interesting chappie who said that the YouTube algorithms really aren't that happy if a channel only broadcasts once a week, so we decided we could text ya whenever we've got a piece of news in our new book on the track extra. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of On the Track Extra. My name's John Downs, and as you probably already know, I'm the director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology. But this show isn't just about cryptozoology, it's about natural history in general, particularly the weirder side of it. And guess what came through my letterbox this morning? The latest issue of Butterfly, which is the Butterfly Conservation magazine. And this is one of those things, again, that I always look forward to and I want to share with you. So, I've got Mr. McCrinnan on the phone. Say hello to the boys and girls, Mr. McCrinnan.
Hello to the boys and girls.
And Mr. McCrinnan and I are going to be looking at the new issue of Butterfly Conservation. I've got to take my glasses off because my reading glasses don't actually let me read, which is interesting.
I'm getting reading glasses in 2 weeks.
Are you? Well, you'll be able to read things then, won't you?
I will indeed.
Now, there's something here which I bet you didn't know.
What's that?
That moths beat bees now as efficient pollinators.
Is that because there's too few bees?
No, it says here, amidst widespread concern about the decline of wild pollinating insects like bees and butterflies, researchers from the University of Sussex, and that's where Louis went, that's Louis's alma mater, have discovered that moths are particularly efficient like nighttime pollinators. And whilst the moths made fewer visits during the shorter summer nights, accounting for only 15% of the visits, they were able to pollinate the flowers more quickly. And they found that 83% of insect visits to bramble flowers were made during the day.
Brambles?
Brambles, blackberries.
Richard will not be pleased.
Why not?
Well, he freaks out over moths. They freak him out.
Oh, he's just weird, he is. I love him dearly, but goodness me, he's strange. Now, what have I got here? We've got various people have got awards for various things. Oh, that's nice. There are open gardens for people whose gardens have been optimised for butterflies and moths. I'd love that. At the moment, my garden has been optimised for 3 old fridges and an empty aviary, but I'm sure it'll be nicer again soon. Oh, and here's a good piece of news. It's a bumper year. It's been a bumper year for hummingbird hawk moths. 2022 was. Now, I don't know if you know this, but hummingbird hawk moths are not a British species.
No, they come over from Europe, don't they?
They actually come all the way up from North Africa.
Do they?
Yeah.
I know that some of them sort of habituate in the south of France.
Yeah, they can live all year round in the south of France, but unlike native British butterflies and moths, they are continually brooded, which means that they don't hibernate. But something really interesting has been happening. They've started to hibernate. Or they've started, if not pure hibernation, to go into a state of torpor in the winter. And they've been found having woken up from that torpor surprisingly early in the year. There have even been reports in January. And I don't know about you, I love hummingbird hawk moths.
I do as well. They're lovely. And I love the exotic looking caterpillars as well. They're quite freaky looking, aren't they?
Yeah, and they eat, they live off honeysuckle, I believe.
That's one of them, isn't it? It's one of the things they like.
It says here the hummingbird hawk moth appears to have had a bumper year in 2022 with an estimated tenfold increase in sightings across the UK. Tenfold.
Wow. I wonder why the ladybirds not doing very well this year.
I don't know.
Have you noticed?
I didn't know they weren't.
You don't get out much outside, really, do you? But I mean, this year, I mean, everyone at the allotments. I mean, everyone that I talked to at the allotments, whenever the aphids come up, it's a bumpy year for aphids all over, and the ants are having a great time farming them and milking them, but there's precious few adult ladybirds about. We've seen some of the youngsters, the things that look a little bit more like elongate beetles, but
I thought you were going to say looking a bit more like Elon Musk.
Yes, but yeah, I've only seen 4 ladybirds this year.
Good Lord.
Well, I say 4 ladybirds. I mean 4 adult ladybirds with the red and the spots.
Yeah.
All that.
Have you seen any of the? Have you seen any of the larvae?
I've seen the nymphs feeding on various aphids, but very few of them. And I was just wondering why this year there seemed to be, well, certainly in this area, in Bristol, there seemed to be very, precious few ladybirds about.
Well, something that I found quite disturbing was I went to a garden centre some years ago and they were selling ladybird nymphs as a way of keeping aphids off your roses. Well, on the face of it, that looks like a really good idea. But I am always worried about mass releasing of captive bred animals, whatever they are, into the countryside. The biggest being, of course, pheasants. We release millions and millions of pheasants each year. They are not British birds. They are from northern China. And they're released into the countryside to be run over by cars and shot.
Yes.
And I wonder whether the growth in using ladybirds to using captive bred ladybirds is some sort of way of looking after your roses could have affected the wild population. I'm just saying I have no evidence for it affecting the wild population at all. But it's just an idea that comes into my mind.
Well, they're a bit of a mystery to me, the natural history of ladybirds, because you've got all these different X spots. They say like, oh, this is a 2 spot, this is a 4 spot, this is, they've all got different spots, and I'm wondering, are those different breeds? Are they different species of ladybirds, or is it just a random thing?
No, they're different. They are different species, and as far as I'm aware, most of them won't interbreed.
Right. So so it does seem a bit weird that all of the ladybird species with all the different numbers of spots seem to be in decline this year. And I was a bit concerned because wasn't it just last year that this government re-allowed the use of glyphosate again.
I believe so. That's something we did a show about beginning of last year because Maxine is very concerned about it and is quite a campaigner against the use of glyphosate.
Yeah. And also, I mean, if you look up online, it's affecting human health in a big way. It's being found in flour, it's being found in sugar, it's being found in all sorts of foods that people buy at supermarkets. They do random testing and they find glyphosate in it. And it's been implicated in all sorts of things like cancers and potentially Alzheimer's and just all sorts of things. So, not a good thing to use. I mean, why use something like that in the first place? If you were going to use some sort of chemical to get rid of some sort of pest off a crop, it should be specifically targeted at the pest. And it would be better if instead of using a chemical, you use another species that's a natural predator of the pest.
As long as enough research and development is done to make sure that the introduction of captive bred specimens doesn't mess up the ecosystem for everybody else.
Absolutely.
Because Max was telling me once that, the epidemic of chytrid fungus that's gone all over the world and decimated amphibian populations, that apparently all came from infected clawed frogs which were released into the wild. African clawed frogs released into the wild, and that is how it's set up. This is what is the cause of this horrible epidemic of chytrid.
Wow.
But moving swiftly on, Dr. Richard Fox, head of science at Butterfly Conservation, commented, 2022 was an amazing year for moth immigration in the UK, with what I'm sure will ultimately prove to be the largest influxes ever recorded for several species. So it will be no surprise if it also proves to have been a great year for the hummingbird hawk moth. Moving on, this is interesting. Moths threatened by climate change could be saved by better water management. New research from Butterfly Conservation and Northumbria University has shown that moths that are adapted to cooler conditions are being lost in parts of Britain as a result of climate change. Scientists now discover that increasing the amount of water available for them could be the key to saving these species amidst rising temperatures, and that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? I mean, there's nothing I could say, nothing anyone could say against that. That makes perfect sense. I just hope that the water companies, who are not exactly showing themselves up at the moment to be very green-minded, I hope that they will act on this.
Well, maybe if the Environment Agency actually made them, it would help.
It would help if all sorts of governmental and non-governmental groups in the United Kingdom would actually do what they're supposed to do, rather than spend their time arguing with each other about the definitions of what they're supposed to be doing.
Yes, stopping people from doing their own ecological works that we used to do when we were children, and children aren't allowed to do anymore.
Yeah, I think that's disgusting. And so, ladies and gentlemen, V and I chatted for so long, it actually lasted for about half an hour, which is far too long for an On the Track Extra. So we're going to be concluding our conversation next week. I hope you find our meanderings about butterflies and ladybirds and non-governmental organisations as fascinating as we do. I'll be back on Saturday. I'm not going to tell you what's in Saturday's show because I've completely forgotten. And as already said, I'll be back next Wednesday with more of me and V and the new issue of the Butterfly Conservation magazine. But assuming that everybody is going to be there to watch us, Mr. McCrinnan, if you're all there to watch us, Mr. McCrinnan, and that I'm there, which I will be because I always am, I'll be seeing you.